Hi everyone, and welcome back to Nalco's Distribution in Vancouver, BC. My name is Peter Maki. Today's video topic is about fixing repairs, kind of fixing up little issues that you might run into while you're installing at site. Sometimes you get some of those nasty air bubbles that you actually don't realize you got, and just sometimes when you're overlapping a squeegee stroke, sometimes you do miss out and you get a decent sized air bubble that doesn't push out into the air release channels. Show you how to get rid of some of those, as well as sometimes you'll have damaged vinyl that shows up to site. You know, you might have a piece that has some kind of damaged wrinkles. If it's not cut the whole way through, you don't need to throw it out. We can heat it up, fix it. I'll show you that as well. One of the other things is sometimes, like on this panel, we've got a chunk out of it. I'll show you how to do one filler piece instead of replacing the entire panel, but just then replacing that one section. So, some of the tools that I'm going to be using today, my knife, as always, and I want to make sure that I've got brand new blades, be able to crack those off because we want to make sure we get a really nice, good, deep double cut. Smooth edges, my air release pen, this I use all the time, it's always in my pouch, and a white firm squeegee. So when we're marrying those edges together, when we're doing a double cut, I like to use this firm squeegee. I can really kind of push those edges together and get them really seamless. So, I'll show you a couple of things that we've got, a couple of things that I do at site, and you never know what's kind of going to happen, so hopefully a couple little tricks here will help you through any issues that you have. Alright, so one of the issues that's super common is you're applying your film and you end up with air bubbles. And this is actually, it's really hard to see on camera, and you know, we're struggling even just to be able to show it. But basically it's right in here, and just looking at it, it's actually really hard to see. So one of the things is, as you're feeling the film with your hand, you can feel it. So it's kind of, one of the things I like to do after I do an install is to kind of run over everything with my hand. If bubbles aren't visible, you can definitely feel it. And one of the things that I'm going to do is just turn this piece of glass around. I want to show you that on the back, you can see there's absolutely no adhesion right here. And so if for some reason, you know, you were to get some sort of moisture in behind, it can cause some failure, but that's not proper adhesion. So we're going to zoom the camera back out and I'll show you how to get rid of that bubble. Alright, so with a lot of bubbles, you know, when they're fairly small, like kind of a 1/4 inch or less, a lot of the times you can actually just go with your squeegee everything out and get rid of those bubbles. And you know, if you feel any, because Bodak Hyundai film has air release channels, it's nice because you can actually go in and sometimes you'll feel a bubble, you go in with your finger and you can actually just disperse that air throughout the back of the vinyl in behind those specific air release channels. It's a great feature and really helps to get rid of a lot of the bubbles. However, this bubble here that I created is a little bit bigger, probably about 1 inch across. And so this is where my air release tool comes into play. So it's got a really, really fine tip to it. And you know, I know even people will use a really fine syringe that you can actually go in, poke a hole, pull some of the air out. Sometimes when you have some of those corners. My air release tool, they're not cheap. However, I use mine almost every single day. One of the things you want to make sure with your air release pen, you never use it for anything other than just poking holes through vinyl. Because it's got such a fine point, it makes a small enough hole that it actually won't damage the material. Where if you come in with your blade and you actually do just a slight slice, what can happen is over time that slight slice will actually open. Versus this is a fine enough pin that you can make a lot of holes and they're not visible, so you won't see them. So basically what we want to do is just come in. I always start with making a couple of holes to see if that will do the trick. So I made a couple of holes there, and I come in with my finger, and then I can feel. And you know what? That was enough. So I could actually feel that, and now that air bubble is gone. So if we look on the back, we can see that we no longer have that hole that had all of the air in it. You want to make sure too, when you put your air release tool back into your pouch, that you always bring it back in. Because the pins, as soon as you kind of drop it or you poke yourself, it hurts. But as soon as that tip gets damaged, you can no longer use it because it's not creating that small, very fine pin hole that can release the air. So one of the things that might happen is you've got a piece of vinyl. Obviously, this is a really small piece of vinyl, but I just want to show you guys an example. But you'll have your material show up to site, and maybe you hit the end of the roll along the way, and you've got like kind of a ding on the edge. Or, you know, maybe your piece of vinyl that you're using for some reason accidentally got kind of crunched up. So this is a fairly extreme case, but you never know what happens. You might only have one piece left. You don't have any extra. So no worries, you don't need to throw this out. Basically, all we're going to do is, as long as the material isn't ripped or torn, we can bring it back to life just with a heat gun. So with this piece here, this is a brushed aluminum finish that almost looks like it's dented. Now, what I'll show you is, I'm just going to peel part of this back, and as you can see, it's got some serious damage to it. We'll heat this up and bring it right back to life, and I'll show you the difference between the two sides. So what we want to do is, you want to make sure that you let the material cool back down before you start applying, because that will definitely stretch. But you can see we've basically brought this material back to life. It's perfect. We don't need to throw that piece out. And you can see up here we've still got those dings, but again, it's pretty well back to life. And sometimes you can bring it back to normal, even on the paper backing. But generally you'll find that it comes out a lot more easily when you've actually pulled the material up and just given it a little kiss of heat. So I've got an example here where we've got a little tear in this piece of vinyl. This is a wood grain finish. And the way that we wrap this panel is we'll wrap it in three pieces, the sides, and then this middle piece. So instead of having to unwrap everything, remove everything, refinish it, and install a whole new piece here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a spot repair. And this spot repair technique kind of will go right across the board. So whether it's on a door, a kitchen cabinet, a wall, a floor, whatever it may be, we can use this same repair technique in just about any application. This is a little bit more tough. We want to make sure that we've got nice fresh blades for this. We're going to have our white squeegee with a firm edge on it, and I actually have some leftover material that's the same as this. And as you can see, we can actually get this grain to line up actually quite well with this leftover piece. So I think that we're going to be able to get this repaired without having to replace this whole piece. We can do it quickly and make it look seamless. Okay, so we've got our damaged piece of vinyl here. Now, I've got my extra material, and as you can see, it's actually got like a fairly close pattern here, so that we'll be able to kind of line up, and I'm thinking probably more in this area. We'll be able to cut a piece out of here, replace here. And what you want to do is to basically make sure, and I actually cracked this blade, so I've got a really nice fresh piece of knife here, is we want to come in and basically just cut a fairly easy pattern, something that's going to be easy to mimic on the piece that we cut out to replace inside, because ultimately what we're going to do is this is basically a three-step process. First, we got to cut the damaged area out. Next, we got to find our piece of vinyl that we're then going to replace with, and we're going to cut a similar shape out of our new vinyl, lay it inside, then we're going to double cut around, and we've got to pull away the excess material from on top, underneath, and then we got to marry those edges together to get a really nice seamless finish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by making my first cut and peel out the vinyl, and what we'll do is we'll speed this process up to make it a little bit easier for you guys. Okay, so I've got my piece cut out, and as you can see it's a fairly straightforward shape, nothing too special about it, but I can do it in 2 easy cuts that I can then start to marry up my piece. So what I'm going to do is now find a piece that's kind of similar to what I'm going to cut out, and you know, this is kind of the tough part, but actually this piece right here looks like it's going to work quite well. So I'm actually just going to cut this out right now, and I'm just cutting out obviously far too much, but I'll be able to then just line this up and see if I can get it to look pretty good and pretty close on that wood grain. And so I want to make sure that everything kind of lines up, looks pretty good, and you know, it's almost going to look like a knot when we're done. So one of the things that I want to do now is figure out exactly where the edges are of that piece that I cut out, because what we want to do is go really close to that, kind of cut about 1/4 inch. So this is like, now I've got my piece in, but it's really hard to feel the edges, so I'm just going to give this a little bit of heat and then really kind of get it pushed into the edges so I know where I got to cut. So that is actually a little better now. This is the tough part of doing these repairs, is trying to find where that edge is, because I want to come in and cut along there. I want to basically come back through, cut along each edge, and give myself about 1/8 inch. So again, I want to start with a nice fresh blade, crack that off. So I've got my top piece here and I can feel it. And again, I'm going to look to try and just be about 1/8 inch. It's really hard to see, but I'm cutting through both pieces of material, and I'm going to come down to the bottom here, and I'm going to stop. And that I've actually gone a little bit more than 1/4 inch. And again, I'm going to start from the top here. And this one I can actually see a little bit better. And I'm going to come down around. And again, to the bottom, lining up with my other cut that I made. So now what I can do is peel away that material, the excess material. And so when I cut through both layers. And so just looking at this, the pattern actually lines up really nicely and quite well. I'm pleased about that. Now the second part of this is I've got to peel up my piece of material that I put, and this is a little bit tricky in that I've got to peel this up, and then underneath you'll see I'm going to start one edge at a time. You'll see that I've got a bit of this overlap. So I'm going to start from this side here. I know this is probably pretty tough for you guys to see at home because it is so finicky. So I've got all of my edges peeled up from underneath. It's a bit of a time-consuming process, a little bit tough, but now essentially what we want to do is really marry these pieces and these edges together. That's where my white squeegee comes into play. So what we want to do is just get started in one spot, and we want to make sure that we get this right down and really bring these two edges together. And it's just a rocking back and forth motion. And we can feel as we come along, I can feel that, you know what, that's really seamless. And again, just rocking back and forth. I know I'm going the wrong way for you guys to watch, but this is just going to marry those edges together. And what we want to do is make sure that this is as seamless as we can get it. And so I find that sometimes you do got to go back over a couple of times and really just kind of push those edges to get it nice and smooth. So with this, we've got this nice smooth edge, and you can barely even feel actually where those seams are. And it's almost impossible to see where that repair was done. I know it's hard to see at home, but we were able to match this grain quite nicely. We were able to get this in there quite well. So that did take me about, 10 minutes to do. However, that's a lot less time and headache than trying to replace this whole piece here, which would be quite the pain. So you can take this method and transfer it to just about any surface that you have. One of the difficult things is that sometimes, depending on the pattern, where it may be, you might have to kind of really go through your vinyl to find a perfect piece. But by doing an easy shape that you can replicate and trace around, you can get a really nice, clean finish. Your client's going to be happy with that, and it's barely noticeable. All right, so here's a little tip using painter's tape or even masking tape, any sort of low-tack tape. I learned to do this after I pulled paint up off of a wall that I was wrapping close to. So if you're wrapping, and this will apply to corners or any sort of area where you've got vinyl meeting a painted wall and you need to trim that vinyl down. So I'm just going to show you on this small piece of frame here what I like to do. Just basically run your green tape or masking tape, anything that's fairly low adhesive, so that you're not going to pull any of the paint off along the edge of the surface that you're wrapping. So in this case, with this door frame, I would wrap the whole way around with my green painter's tape. And I'll show you why I do this. Basically, I've just got a scrap little piece of film here. And what I'm going to do is just quickly wrap this frame to show you what I mean. So if I'm wrapping this, I'm going to be coming around and over the edge. And sometimes as you're coming over the edge here and really getting into this corner, what can happen is this vinyl here will stick to your painted surface. And then after you go to trim, what can end up happening is when you go to pull up the material, you'll pull up some of the paint. But with our green painter's tape there, I can pull this off, leaving the painter's tape, remove the painter's tape, and I've got a perfect surface that hasn't been damaged. And for those of you out there who are watching this video and you've run into this issue, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because having to repaint a wall is a massive hassle, a big cost, and the 20 cents in tape that you're going to use and the extra few minutes that you're going to take to apply the tape and remove it, well worth it in the long run. So I hope that everybody found this last video helpful. There's a couple of small little tricks there that you can do to help get yourselves out of a bit of a sticky situation. Getting those repairs done after you've installed, sometimes getting those bubbles out, as well as those possible spot repairs and some little taping techniques that will hopefully help you save some time, some money, some material, and really make your project look fantastic. I hope that everybody learned something in this video, and remember to check out our other videos. Set up the alert so that you get an alert when we post new videos, because we're always working on different tips, different techniques, and we're at different projects and some really, really cool and interesting projects. So you'll get to see what we do at these different projects and how we execute them. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Look forward to seeing you again.